I was born at 2 Emily Street, Keighley, Yorkshire, and I lived there until I was 19. My father was 50 years old and my mother only a few months younger. So to have probably the oldest parents of anybody I know, it was not a big house because we had a shop which occupied most of the ground floor. You'll find this very strange, but I was brought up in a cellar. We lived in the cellar. And, well, there were 2 big cellars, the one for living in, and of course where the washing machine eventually would come, not at first. And the coal was shuttled down, and there were shelves all round. It was quite a place. Shelves with chemicals, drugs of various types. And so up in the attic where I eventually landed up with my brother, we rigged up a wonderful reading system because there's no electricity. We didn't have electricity and the gas didn't reach up to the attic. So we had to use either candles or something else. So Alan, being a clever beggar, devised an electrical system using, I don't know if you've ever heard of Leclanché cells, but they're a bit like a battery of some sort, but they're in big glass jars, and you have rods and things going in, and we hooked those up to a lot of flashlight bulbs so that we could read in bed properly. Bathing facilities were conducted in the washroom where there's a great big boiler full of hot water, and you could bathe in the zinc bath by the fire. Lovely. There were quite a few of us at home. I had 5 sisters and a brother older than me. My eldest sister was Mary, who everybody knows, Mary B. Then I had a sister Jane who was, she became a teacher. Mary was a teacher, Jane became a teacher, Alan was a doctor. Agnes was a chemist. Anne was a trainee chemist and then got married early. Alice became a teacher, and so did I eventually. So there we were. Well, my father had the shop. He was a herbalist, and he was in the back room on the ground floor behind the shop. That was where he worked. He filled out his prescriptions and things like that, because he did a lot of work with a medium who could apparently tell people's illnesses simply by smelling at their handkerchief or something like that, and then she would write down the prescriptions and my father then filled them in. When I got a bit older, I was then given the job of taking these round to the people who'd ordered them. We were lucky that Mother could stay at home and look after us. She was a full-time mum, more than full-time. She worked herself to the bone, really. She used to dress. She always had a pinny on, and she always wore a little mop cap round her head, and inevitably a duster in one hand, because the place used to shine. And she did everything. She did the cooking, the washing, cleaning, painting, in fact, everything. My father, when he wasn't at working, had a hen pen which was about a mile away, and he used to go there. He had something like 100 pigeons and about the same number of hens, so that in the laying season he used to come back home with 2 buckets full of eggs. we very often went to one of my mother's sisters who lived in Barrow, well, on Whalley Island actually, just off the coast from Barrow. We were allowed a great deal of freedom whilst we were there as well, going on the sands and that, so we didn't ask for much. I can't remember anybody going abroad for holidays. There were lots of good seaside places. One thing we got, a Christmas present, you shudder to think of it now, a smoker's outfit. And they were like licorice pipes and sugary cigarettes and things like that in it, which were lovely to eat. You know, it was a very free childhood. We were never, might be asked where we were going to, but we weren't bothered. We made our own fun. I enjoyed school. The teachers were gems, they really were. And it was a very comfortable school. I remember the first classroom I was in, there was a big fire which always kept going. There was discipline there. I mean, you didn't step out of line in a class, or if you did, you were hit. When we were in the sixth form, we got into trying to make explosives, which we succeeded in doing quite well, actually. Leisure time, a crowd of us used to assemble on the steps of the library in town and chat and tell jokes, and then quite often we used to have a walk up onto the moor and sing. That clothes were unimportant. I must admit that I bought myself a blue tweed +4 suit, which was quite nice, very, very trendy in those days. Even during the time that we were at school and college and university, my father remortgaged his house about 3 times to keep us there. I knew that they had given their lives to the family, so their expectation was that we were all graduate. I happened to see an advert in a student paper for this course in petroleum engineering at Birmingham University, so I applied for that and got in, just like that, no bother. And but I'd no scholarship, no backing at all like that. I had to borrow money to go. I didn't finish the engineering course actually because, again, I failed one subject, and during wartime, no resits. If you failed, out. So I was out of university, so I had to go in the forces.
I was born in a little place called Coling, up on the moors, about 4.5 miles to Combe, which Lancashire started there, you see. So I was only just born in Yorkshire, but we only stayed there until I was about 2 years old, and then we moved further down, so that we were living near my grandmother, my mother's mother, and her family, which was very good, because I had a lot of great aunts living there, as well as my mother's sisters and brothers and everything. So I really had a wonderful childhood. And I went to the same school that my mother had gone to, and it's hard to describe how different it was in many ways, because somehow we were surrounded by all these people, and all the time everything was going on for us. When I was about 7 years old, we moved nearer to Keighley. I just had my older brother then, John. He was only 18 months older than me. And we went to school in a place called Utley. Geoffrey was born there. Now, again, we moved yet again on the outskirts of Keighley, and my brother Peter was born there. When we were living there, I got a scholarship to the grammar school, at the girls' grammar school. I left the grammar school at 15 because I really thought that my parents wouldn't be able to afford for me to go to college. My father had worked in the mill from being very young. My mother, at the age of 13, had been allowed to work in the mill. I remember once saying to her, "Didn't you think it rather awful that you went to work in the mill?" And she said, "No, we were proud to earn the money to give to our mother." She had so many relatives working there. So it was, in a lot of ways, it was very much a family affair. My mother used to make me clothes. We didn't have washing machines or anything like that, but I suppose she thought she was the washing machine. I remember my father bringing a radio home. I was only very young, and when he put it on, it started talking, and I started talking back to it. I can remember them laughing away. I think that we were very fortunate because we just used to play, and of course you could play out when you went home. We used to go on holiday to Morecambe. We just played on the beach, and I guess you could go to a fun fair, and that was about it. Before the war, we were friendly with quite a lot. There were quite a lot of boys, if you like, round about our age, from the boys' grammar school. No hanky-panky, nothing like that, just, you know, together. We just used to gather on the steps of Keighley Library and have a chat, and then perhaps we'd go a walk together. We didn't go into pubs, but I remember when I was 14 starting to smoke, and when I met school friends on a Saturday afternoon to go to the pictures, we would light a cigarette in the pictures. But we got away with an awful lot, you know. After I'd left the grammar school, and my brother had started working in a foundry by then, we moved again nearer to the town of Keighley, and sadly my little brother Peter died. He was only 4, and then we moved down to what was called Stockbridge, which was on the other side of Keighley, and that's where we stayed. And when war broke out, I made my mind up. I didn't want to be called up.